Welcome to Biblio Cultist, where I review books that I find interesting in the topics of theology, philosophy, history, and fiction. Today I will go over the tale of the Incomparable Prince by Tshe Ring Dbang Rgyal, and hopefully I am pronouncing that name correctly, but I'm willing to bet that I'm not. Tibetan names I've always found to be particularly difficult to pronounce, so please excuse that, but I can't help it. It comes to my pronunciation of the name. Before I go into the book, please remember to subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, share the video, like the video, and comment on the video. If you would like to share something with me or exchange with me, I'll be more happy to do so. Before I go into the content of the book, the edition is from HarperCollins, hardcover from 1996. In this particular version of the tale of the Incomparable Prince was translated by Beth Newman. Now, this work is considered to be the Tibetan epic. It was written in the 18th century, and it has all the basic characteristics of an epic. It has what you would call a formula: love, war, conflict, and then theology or religion. Most epics have these basic components, and it just kind of adjusts to the cultural context. Now, even though it is formulaic, I found it to be very entertaining. Again, a lot of works may have a formula, but if it's done well, there's no reason why you shouldn't enjoy the book anyway. And you can have a book that is not formulaic and it's terrible. So the fact that a work has a very basic or classic structure and classic themes doesn't make it less enjoyable. And I mean, say that to the Odyssey or the Iliad, etc. They have formulas, but they're very enjoyable. Now, one thing that it did stand out to me, it's pretty obvious that the author got inspiration from the Ramayana, and I would add, because the introduction mentions the Ramayana, that makes sense. But the introduction doesn't mention the book that came to mind to me immediately when I was reading it, which is the Bhagavata Purana, especially on the topic of the passionate love between the two main characters. There's a lot of passionate, and I would say very graphic, exchanges between the characters, which actually I found very surprising. I was not expecting a book from a very religious Buddhist to be so graphic as an epic. Now, it's pretty clear that the author understood that the kind of racy language would make the epic more exciting, but I still found it very surprising. And again, the Bhagavata Purana, especially the 10th canto, also has a graphic nature, and that's what it reminded me of. The relationship between the two main characters, without giving too many spoilers, reminded me of the Radha-Krishna exchanges in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. So I thought I would share that because it did stand out to me. There's also the interesting dynamic of monasticism in the work. The monastic aspect of Tibetan culture, which kind of comes through in the work, but also the introduction is very good as well. The introduction by the translator gives you a lot of really good information, and again, a lot of my perception of monasticism, which was based on me going to Tibetan Buddhist temples and meeting Tibetan Buddhists. I mean, I've done all that for years, but seeing it from a historic perspective, seeing it from a literary perspective is very different, and I find it very enjoyable as well. The political critique Now, the author was a politician, so it makes sense that this would be his favorite part, or at least his most impactful part. But the political critique is really good because it is making the case that you cannot have really a good government without the members of said government, the servants of the government, the leadership of the government, having a religious spine, basically a moral spine. If the leadership is corrupted and enamored by sense gratification, obsessed with financial gain, sense pleasures, and an absurdly aggressive desire to dominate others, then your country will suffer. And yes, this is quite obvious, I would say, although in modern times, I don't think it's that obvious. I mean, most politicians in the modern world are absurdly corrupt, absurdly selfish, and I would say psychotically bent on the destruction of their own nations and their own self-destruction, I would say, at the end of it all. They're almost suicidal because their behavior indicates a lack of self-respect and therefore a lack of respect for those they claim to serve, although they are serving themselves. And this epic goes into that issue. It explores these topics from a Buddhist point of view, but I would say it would apply to anyone. So a Christian reading this could identify and could relate to it, a Muslim, and I would say any other religion. So very, very beautiful the way the author integrates the kind of heavy political with the sensual and then with the theological. And as an epic, another thing that stood out to me was the Pure Land component of the work. I am familiar with Pure Land Buddhism because I find it to be very similar to the Bhakti movements in India, which you have a transition from a methodology of enlightenment that was based on knowledge or very heavy ascetic practices to a more devotional methodology of enlightenment in which you chant the name of the deity, you visit the temple of the deity, you develop love and devotion to the deity, and in this way you eventually go to the deity. And in the case of Pure Land, you go to Buddha Land and you're able to meditate and learn directly from the Buddha and grow in your capacity for eventual liberation. So their methodology is therefore more accessible to the common people. It doesn't require a very aggressive set of disciplines and very strict behavioral morality to be able to at least access the possibility of enlightenment. So this work, because it is very mundane at first, it's not a very fantastical work that aims to place Buddhism in a utopian scenario in which the participants are divorced from reality and desire and common day-to-day concerns, but even beyond common day-to-day concerns, the existential concerns that most people think certain religions are not able to address because they're obsessed with rules and regulations. Now, again, this is a very modern concern. Most people in the past were aware and accepted the fact that if you wanted to participate or advance in life, you needed to have discipline and you needed to follow do's and don'ts. We still do. We just try to ignore the fact that to be successful in anything, you have to have discipline. In this work, he places a very exciting and dramatic set of events and places the characters, some of which are unrighteous, but some of which are righteous. And by placing them in these scenarios, then he can engage the theology of Buddhism in a pragmatic way and demonstrate how you can have a civilization that is materially engaged but still be righteous and on the way towards enlightenment. So I don't want to give a lot more details on this because I think that if I do, it will spoil the work. But hopefully this gives you a general conception of the work. I knew it was not going to be too long of a video because it's the kind of epic that just has to be read. I just wanted to give you some of the basic components and topics in the work and hopefully entice you towards getting the book. Again, like I always say, get a soft cover, hardcover, it doesn't matter. Just get the work, read it. And after you read it, come back, listen to the video, and maybe you'll be able to extract more from what I was saying, and you can comment, share the video, like the video, and remember to subscribe if you like the content. So I appreciate you being with me here. See you next time.